About Ergon, the Ergonomics Club. It was founded in December 2019, conducted around 30 meets webinars within 20 months, from 30 to 200 members, started from a small group physical meeting to a global reach through virtual platforms. The purpose of this club is to promote ergonomics to help people work with comfort and efficiency, to create awareness at professionals, public, and governmental levels, and to help in professional development. How does it work? Online and offline networking, education, or other events. One can volunteer, polish public speaking skills, share knowledge, mentor young professionals, and learn from others. Mission is la key. Learning, action, quality, and ideas. Who can be a member? This is an international virtual community of professionals from different backgrounds. The primary group is open for all ergonomics enthusiasts, occupational and physical therapists who are already practicing ergonomics. The other group is for all who support the cause of human factors at work. So, professionals from all backgrounds keen to learn, volunteer, support, or sponsor events. Membership fee. Currently, there is no membership fee to be a part of the community. How to become a member? Just send a WhatsApp message stating your interest to join the club with your name, qualification, profession, city, and country. Benefits of membership: first, information of events, priority registration for events, discounts on paid webinars, seminars, and conferences, platform to present your case studies, papers, and thoughts, preferred references for work through networking, regular interaction and discussion to help develop an ergonomic thinking.
It's not only been wonderful being with the group because there's been a lot of sharing in the past 5 years. We began in Goregaon, a small, gathering, which actually was a physical meeting at McDonald's, and we had a lot of fun, had burgers, and uh, first live interaction with some of the ergonomist and ergonomic enthusiasts. And interestingly, we had, though it was a small meeting, people had flown all over from various parts of the country and from the world. So there were people from Australia, USA, and Gujarat and whatnot. So I think the beginning was itself indicative that there is something which is different, and there is something that has to be explored a lot in this field now. So everybody was excited. Unfortunately, later on, Corona set in and lockdown was in place. Everybody didn't know what to do. And I think there was a blessing in disguise because that is when we could meet more people than people from US, Canada, Australia, Dubai, and many other parts of the world, I think, and India. They could join even if when they were not in Mumbai because we had all online sessions. We had about 27 meetings, and the 25th meeting was really, a remarkable one because I myself did not know the talent that existed in this group and the way they had put things together. I think that was amazing because it was almost like a live event. Everybody participated. There was live quiz and Antakshari, and I don't know what. I mean, it was really amazing to see that an online event can be so lively, and that too, everything was technical, but still done the fun way. I hope we have some more sessions like that. Maybe the 50th meeting of Argon Tech will be again the similar one. Anyways, to begin with, I think I'll introduce you to today's meeting host. Our MC is Ms. Nidhi Dave, and she has been an extremely big support in terms of all the technical, handling. She's been doing all the X Factor show uploads and the edits and the PPTs, the sharing, the recordings, everything she's been managing wonderfully. and we are blessed to have her with us today for the hosting of this event. Um, we have Richie Shambarkar, who is an IIT student, and he's there too to support us with the technical aspects today. And may I now request Richie to just play our Ergon Tech, the Ergonomics Club introduction, and then I would request Nidhi to take the things ahead.
About Ergon, the Ergonomics Club. It was founded in December 2019, conducted around 30 meets webinars within 20 months, from 30 to 200 members, started from a small group physical meeting to a global reach through virtual platforms. The purpose of this club is to promote ergonomics to help people work with comfort and efficiency, to create awareness at professionals, public, and governmental levels, and to help in professional development. How does it work? Online and offline networking, education, or other events. One can volunteer, polish public speaking skills, share knowledge, mentor young professionals, and learn from others. Mission is lucky. Learning, action, quality, and ideas. Who can be a member? This is an international virtual community of professionals from different backgrounds. The primary group is open for all ergonomics enthusiasts, occupational and physical therapists who are already practicing ergonomics. The other group is for all who support the cause of human factors at work. So, professionals from all backgrounds keen to learn, volunteer, support, or sponsor events. Membership fee. Currently, there is no membership fee to be a part of the community. How to become a member? Just send a WhatsApp message stating your interest to join the club with your name, qualification, profession, city, and country. Benefits of membership: first, information of events, priority registration for events, discounts on paid webinars, seminars, and conferences, platform to present your case studies, papers, and thoughts, preferred references for work through networking, regular interaction and discussion to help develop an ergonomic thinking.
Awesome. I'll request Nidhi Dave, Dr. Nidhi Dave, to take over.
Thank you, Mona ma'am. Firstly, a very warm welcome to one and all present here. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of Ergon Tech. I would now kindly request Arichi to please share the screen where we will take a brief moment to honor the legacy of Dr. Mahesh Wadhwa. On this occasion, let us fondly remember Dr. Mahesh Wadhwa sir, who was a senior occupational therapist associated with our club. He had been immensely instrumental in mentoring a lot of young professionals, including my own self. Let us take a moment and remember how he shaped our journey today. Thank you. Thank you, Richie. I'm sure Sir would have liked us to continue professional development on our journey. And from wherever he is, his blessings are with us. So let us take today's occasion to celebrate what he would have definitely liked: professional development on all fronts. Today we have a wonderful speaker with us, Ashwini Talpade ma'am, who is going to introduce us to a wonderfully new topic for us as ergonomists. So a very warm welcome, Ashwini ma'am. I will quickly introduce all of you to ma'am. She is a wonderful personality, and it is an honor and privilege to introduce her. Her remarkable journey spans over 2 decades in the offshore oil and gas industry. Ma'am holds a bachelor's degree in management studies from Mumbai University and an MBA from the MDIS Singapore. Her educational foundation, coupled with extensive technical expertise, has been fortified through specialized seminars and trainings focusing on offshore grouting, cement types, their viability, and whatnot. She also specializes in engineering design for offshore platform installation, modification, repair, as well as the manufacturing of concrete mattresses and grout bags. Her career is defined by pioneering achievements, including being the first person in India to manufacture grout bags, a milestone that has significantly contributed to advancements in the field. She has successfully executed numerous projects across Indian and international waters, showcasing her expertise on a global scale. As a dynamic leader, Ashwini ma'am oversees Ambiko Group, a conglomerate with operations across Mumbai, Bangalore, and Kuala Lumpur. Under her guidance, these companies excel in engineering, manufacturing, equipment maintenance, and project execution, all catering to the specialized needs of the offshore oil and gas sector. Her invaluable contributions and innovative approaches make Ashwini ma'am a sought after speaker and authority in her field. Today, she brings a wealth of experience and insights to share with us. Please join me in welcoming Ashwini Talpade ma'am. Thank you so much. Ma'am, you can take over from here.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here and to speak to all of you all. And I'm very, very glad that Dr. Mona today invited me to give you a small insight on what happens in the offshore oil and gas industry, not entirely, but related to what we do, which is offshore grouting. I'm going to share my screen so that I can prepare a small presentation so that I can walk you through what happens in the grouting business. What is offshore grouting? Basically, offshore grouting is a process that involves filling voids with a cement-based grout that will connect the structure to its supporting piles. It is used in the offshore oil and gas industry, also in the wind industry. In India, we don't right now have a lot of wind farms, but in the next 5 years, you will definitely see that coming up. Grouting basically provides structural support, it enhances stability, it protects against corrosion. It also extends the life of platform. This is an offshore platform. This is basically in any of your waters in Bombay. The other slide I will come to later, but first I'd like to show you a small video on an animation on what exactly is offshore installation. Please have a look. I will also be talking through it to explain. This is an offshore platform. You will see that this is a float over platform. It is being carried into the sea where there is an oil well and dropped to the seabed. Later on, with the help of a crane which is located on the installation barge, the platform is appended. These are your sleeves, and they will have suctions called packers, which will make sure that the piles and the platform are at 90 degrees. Here you will see the pile. This is being drilled into the waterbed, the seabed. The depth at which it's supposed to go will be determined based on a survey. 5 meters, 10 meters, 15 meters, it can go up to 30 meters. Once that has happened, we will bring the suctions to hold those piles together and start grouting. Grouting is a process of cementing. As you can see, this is the cement which is being filled between the platform structure as well as the pile until it is completely finished. Coming back over here, over the years, once the platform has been utilized to do what it's supposed to do, a new survey will take place and they will determine whether or not that platform is viable for 4 years. Oil wells usually outlive the platforms. So once they've determined that the platform is completely decomposed or not completely corroded and can survive for some more years, then a survey is conducted and they find out which members of that platform are weak. Once that is determined, then we start grouting those members, which is basically strengthening of that platform. Everything is taken into consideration: weights, wind, stability, all of that. Here is a member which was cut and brought to shore, not shore, but on top of the vessel, and there the grouting is done. All this grouting happens through these kind of hoses. This is our crew determining exactly how much that member can be put to use. If it can be used again, if it cannot be used again, then they put a new one over there. Coming to our next line of work, which is the fabric formwork grout bags. These are nothing but your polypropylene sacks. But unlike sacks, they are created to form a pyramid shape. Now, you will not fill these on shore. You will take them down, you will strap them to a pipeline which is already existing, and you will fill it up with cement. Once you do that, the pipeline becomes completely and absolutely stable, which is the main job of a grout bag. Once it is hardened and takes the final design, then the grout bag work is over. This is what a grout bag would look in general. They have inlets from which we push cement in offshore. They will have vents which are over here. Once your cement starts overflowing from these vents, you can determine that the bag is full. These straps are used to tie the bag to the pipeline. This is done either by divers, or it can also be done with a ROV. Now, ROV is a remote operated vehicle. Basically, crew sitting on top will send a ROV down to the seabed. They will bring the grout bag down in a cage. And this remote operated vehicle is managed from a small chamber located on top of a vessel. You can see how interesting this is. There is no person in this ROV. It's all automated. It's like your Nintendo game. You know, you have like a joystick and you operate this vehicle and bring your grout bag in place under the pipeline. It will shift the bag, it will position the bag, it will make sure that the bag sits correctly under the pipeline. Right now you can see only one ROV, but in actual there will usually be two ROVs. One ROV will be doing the actual work, the second ROV will be holding a camera to guide the first ROV. Then with the help of these pipelines which are connected on top, we will push cement into the bag. And that's how the bag fills up. Once that is done, the ROV will disconnect the bag and send the cage back up. This is also done with the help of divers. Also a very specialized field. We don't do diving, we only do grouting. You cannot do both. This is precision engineering and needs to be done only where you specialize in. Similarly, there are something called concrete matrices. Concrete matrices are used to stabilize a pipeline from top. Once the pipeline is laid, you can just dump this big mattress on top of that pipeline, and the pipeline will get protected, stabilized, etc. This is nothing but big bars of chocolate, as you can see. They are flexible, they are connected by polypropylene rope, and then they are dropped down to the seabed. There is a quick video on how that is done as well. This is basically an offshore construction vessel, and that is how they will drop the concrete mattress down. As you can see, this is crane operated. There will be an ROV or a diver at the base. This is an ROV again. Once the mattress is dropped, it's done. From a crew point of view, what we expect them to do. This is the kind of equipment that we have. As you can see, it's quite big. A man is standing under there. All of this is in separate parts. It gets assembled offshore, and our crew specializes in assembling it offshore, making all the connections of the cables, of the hoses, and making sure it's connected to cement silos. These are cement silos which hold all our cement. Each silo can hold up to 50 tons of cement. Your hoses are wrapped onto these. These are hose reels. And after making all the connections, once we have the go ahead that the platform has gone into the sea and is now appended and drilled in, we can now start grouting. Everything works like cogs in a wheel. It all comes one after the other. There is a lot of coordination that happens between every team that is present on that construction vessel. Our team specializes in making sure that everything is well cemented without any hiccups. Of course, this equipment needs constant and continuous maintenance because, as you may be aware, that the environment is very, very harsh in offshore. So there is a lot of corrosion that takes place to all this equipment. So this needs constant taking care of, and of course when there is any electricals and you mix it with the extreme sea environment, there is bound to be other electrical issues which also have to be sorted by all our technicians offshore. We usually have a team of about 4 to 5 members. If they're working around the clock, then you double them exactly. This is our yard, which is located in Navi Mumbai. Here is a picture of some of our concrete mattresses that we were fabricating, and a cement transfer happening over here. All our crew expertises in all these operations. Everything works out very well for them. This is the manufacturing unit where we make grout bags. Now, if you will ask what is grout bags, it is nothing but a plastic bag made in different shapes, different sizes, extremely big, which is going to be pumped with cement eventually. Once that is done, then the use of the bag is nothing. Then even if that bag tears away, corrodes, it doesn't matter because the cement has taken shape and has become a pyramid. And nothing will happen to that cement structure, which is now sitting on the bed of the sea. From a ergonomics point of view or from a crew point of view, there are many challenges that we face. We have to take care of crew safety offshore. As you know, the environment offshore is quite harsh. You're sitting on a vessel. There is wave movement. There is extreme weather sometimes. We work all over the world. Sometimes you're working through snow. Sometimes you're working through some rain. Now you will ask, how will you work through rain? Won't your cement solidify? Things like that. Well, they were kept in silos. That will keep the cement dry. All the pumping happens through pipelines. So the cement is not going to get wet. Your crew will. So they have to be very careful when they are on board. So various other measures are taken for crew safety. They're always wearing safety harnesses, safety equipment. Cement exposure is a big challenge. Not just offshore, but even onshore when we are converting cement from bag to bulk. Your cement suppliers will give you cement in 50 kilo bags. You have to make sure that it goes into those silos that we've kept over there. Now that activity has a lot of cement exposure, extreme amounts of cement exposure. So that is something we have to take care of. All the equipment is extremely heavy, weighs in multiples of tons. So the crew has to be very, very careful of how they handle the equipment when the crane is handling the equipment. Even your basic lifting gear, which is your lifting slings, which is attached to the equipment, can be very, very heavy. I mean, sometimes you can lift it up with your hand, sometimes you need a crane to pick it up. So you have to be careful when they are around this kind of heavy equipment. Loud environment. A very common hazard in our industry is eventually people who have worked offshore all lives are going to turn slightly deaf. Their hearing is going, because the environment in offshore is very, very loud. Your drilling, your hammering, all this equipment makes a lot of noise when it's working. So if you don't take care if you don't use proper measures, then eventually that will affect your hearing. We have live examples in front of us from our industry who are still working in the industry, but their hearing has gone down quite a bit. Brain fog is not a very common challenge that we face, but it does happen when when you spend extended periods offshore. When you're on a vessel and you cannot see land for weeks and weeks and months, then eventually all that starts affecting you, and you do face some mental challenges when you're trying to deal with something like that. You're away from family. Of course, now because of technology, communication has increased and communication has become excellent, and you can still get in touch with people at shore. Emails work, calls work, but there was a time when there was only satellite telephone, and messages could be sent via the communication cell of the vessel only. So you could probably send a message to your family, or your family would probably come back and send a message to you, but it was not instant. Now there is internet. Internet is available via satellite on the vessels, so WhatsApp works. So brain fog is now reducing. It's not as 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 big a challenge as it was, say, about a decade ago. Seasickness can happen to anybody. I mean, generally, it's unlike popular thinking. If you're motion sick, you will be seasick. Seasickness, the seasickness I am referring to is because of extended period offshore. Not going on a little tugboat here and there, or taking a ferry and you get sick because of the motion. This seasickness doesn't come because of motion. Now, as you know, a small little ferry will bump around a lot more the big construction vessel. But this sickness happens because of all the environment that you're there on and extended periods. Sometimes some people get seasickness after a few weeks, sometimes they get it after a few months. That is why making sure that people come off and there is a constant rotation of crew is very important. You cannot send someone and say, 6 months job, finish it and come. That's not how it will work. There is a lot of countries have different kinds of extended periods that they allow people to be offshore. Sometimes it is 28 days on, 28 days off. It's 45 days on, 20 days off. It can be 6 months on, 6 months off. It all depends. It all really depends on where you're working, what the environment is, what the challenges are, etc. Safety measures. Our industry is extremely conscious of safety. There are plenty of measures in place. Every person going offshore has to go through an offshore safety course, which is valid for a period of about 3 to 5 years, depending on what course it is. And they have to continuously renew these safety documents of theirs. Safety courses include personal safety, social safety, taking care of yourself, taking care of somebody injured offshore, first aid, helicopter travel courses, because all these construction vessels cannot come to port. They're very big. Ports don't have that kind of draft where they can accommodate such a big vessel. So the vessel usually waits outside of port, which is called the anchorage, and crew and equipment and all your other materials gets transferred by smaller boats. Now, when you send your crew offshore, all these smaller boats take time to go to the vessels. So the quicker way of transferring crew is by helicopter. So training is given to people while you're traveling by helicopter. Very common training is they will take you into a swimming pool, a deep swimming pool, put you inside a chamber, and then turn you upside down into the water, and you have to escape. Now, this is done in case ever you are in a situation where the helicopter goes down underwater for some reason, any failure, or any engine failure, or some other kind of problem, then you should know how to get out of that helicopter. So these kind of trainings are given. Timely medicals are given. Medicals usually have a life of about 1 to 2 years, depending on which area of the world you're in. In India, it's renewed every 2 years. Some places abroad, every 1 year. Extremely harsh environments, you have to do it every time you go offshore, which is the 6 months on, 6 months off period. So every time before you go, you have to go through a medical. They will check your blood, your pressure, they will check your heart, they will check everything before they give you a okay to work certificate offshore. Personal protective equipment, very, very important. Not just offshore, even onshore, even in our yard, people wear it. Hard hats, safety shoes. Safety shoes are steel toed, so that if something drops on your foot, they won't damage your toes. Fire retardant coveralls, face masks. Face masks are very important in my line of work because of the cement exposure that we are subjected to. Eye protection, basically. Different kinds of eye protections are available. Basic eye protection is there. Then there is a tinted eye protection. If you're working during the day, then you need tinted eye protection, because in the water, the glare of the sea is very high. I mean, you would think that you can just go and stare at the sea like the way you do onshore, but that is not possible when you're offshore. So you need to have tinted glasses. When you're working in cement, your glasses need to be completely plugged to your face, like your swimming goggles, so that no dust particles can cross. For eye protection, we also have eye washing stations and cleaning gear and things like that at various points of the vessel, including we have one eye station located in our little container which we call a workshop. We send along with our equipment, and it is placed right next to the equipment. So in case somebody needs to wash their eyes there, they can immediately go and do that over there. Safety harnesses are very important. This is especially because as a rule offshore, if you're climbing anything more than 2 meters, you need to wear a safety harness, because if you fall, you might break something. You will definitely break something, not might. So a safety harness is very important. And these cement silos, which hold our cement, are 6 to 8 meters high. So when I'm saying meters, 1 meter is about 3 feet. So you can do the calculation. They're quite tall. So when you're climbing upwards, you need to have a harness, especially when you're trying to go and do some work on the top hatch. So those kind of safety measures, safety harnesses are available. Medics and first aid, everywhere you go. Every vessel will have a doctor, have a small nursery, small hospice room, first aid access, everything. Of course, if this is just basic, so which will give you immediate and absolutely necessary first aid, and then if required, the person might have to be airlifted out or sent back on boat depending on the condition of the injury and whatnots. Time off is very important. You cannot send somebody offshore and then call him back and without giving him adequate time off, send him back on, because this is one of the biggest causes for brain fog. This is a big challenge that we face in the Indian industry because labor is cheap. I wouldn't call. It's not as cheap as what your land labor is. I mean, technicians and riggers who go offshore get paid a lot than your regular workers. But we as Indians have a very good work job. We tend to overwork ourselves. We work extended hours more than what is required, and that is a big problem mentally. I have had a problem in my personal company as well, where somebody was sent offshore too many times, though with adequate time off. But it was a one-off case where the person couldn't handle being offshore for that long in a year, and he didn't complain. But we found out later that he was on medication for anxiety. Once we found that out, then we made sure that he took some more time off than others, to deal with something of that sort and things like that. So this is basically what our industry goes through. Quickly bringing this to a close. I hope this gave you a good insight on what the industry is all about, and if you all have any questions, I'm open to them.
Any questions? Everybody seems to be spellbound right now.
Like I said, it is too much to take in
Yeah.
on the first go because it is very technical. It takes time to understand what I do. There are still, I won't say still, all my friends don't know what exactly I do. I think I should use this presentation to show them the next time they ask me what do you do.
Absolutely. Yes. Any questions, please?
I think this is new to us, right? Not many of us know about what is going on in the sea offshore. So it'll take time to think and analyze and get back to you so that you can do a little modification here and there. But on the whole, I would say it was good experience for us, something to know from a person who's doing the work for many years offshore. And most of the work is done by machines and not so much by human beings as you look at it.
Not really, sir. Actually, all the machines are operated by human beings.
Yeah, but nowadays, okay.
No, actually, when you send something down, so we are not in the diving business, but diving is a big part of our industry, where crew goes down, like I was just telling one earlier before, that diving is of two types. There's something called air diving, and there's something called sat diving. Sat diving is saturated diving. Air diving, your person will just jump off, not from the side, but he will come down and then go into the water physically. A diver can go down up to 30 meters. So if where you're doing your grouting is shallow waters, then you can send a diver down and he can do that. The grout fills up either the jacket leg or the grout bag, or even sending the concrete mattress down. He will do the releasing physically. Saturation diving happens under 30 meters up to 70, 80 meters, sometimes even 100 meters. And there people are sent down in chambers which are decompressed on board, so that the blood vessels of the person can take that kind of pressure when he goes down, you know. And he goes down in that chamber, and then once he comes back up, he is kept in that chamber and brought back to normal body pressure for about a few hours, sometimes a day, maybe two. Because if you bring somebody out of a saturation chamber without doing that, he will explode like a balloon.
Come down,
Literally. That is a
Come down.
it's very very dangerous.
Angel.
So yeah, there is a lot, and all that
Money
is handled
everything.
by crew. Your
Everything you
connections
need
have to
is.
be offshore. Your pipelines have to be connected. Your hoses have to be connected. The cement has to be transferred. All of that is physical work. It is not automated. It is mechanical. The machines are mechanical machines, not automated machines. That is the difference. So everything has to be operated by a human being. It cannot be completely. Robotics cannot come into this. At least not now. Yes, Saima, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so it was a nice presentation actually, like Sir said, something new for us to understand. I did have some understanding of how things work at the sea because my father was in Bombay port.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
Yeah, he used to go around and he recently retired. So I have one question. It is a little different from the ergonomic aspect. Definitely, the safety part has been taken into consideration. How do you all work on the mental health of the workers? People who are working there, because it must be like you said, it's a long journey, like 6 months or 45 days on into the sea with the seasickness and the brain fog and everything. How do you what are the measures that's being taken for the mental health?
So, to begin with, we will not send a new crew for too many days to start with. It is a development over the years that takes place to do this kind of work. So if it's a brand new technician who's just going offshore for the first time, I will send him for 20 days, 25 days, bring him back off. The older you get, the more experienced you get, the higher up in the rink you go, then you get to stay longer. On board some vessels, there are professional doctors who handle this kind of stuff. Offshore, when the person comes onshore, if somebody is facing a problem, then we do recommend seeing somebody, seeing a psychologist to help with that kind of matter, depending on what it was, because we as technical people will not be able to handle what a person goes through mentally over there. So we do have access. There are a lot of professionals in our industry who you can speak to if you have a problem, or if you think that you cannot cope with the environment or something like that. And recreation, basically, once you come off, you are given enough time off. As a company, we have team building activities. We have we go for a holiday, or we go for a picnic or something like that, or and whatever time off you require. So we give more time off to our crew than your standard 30-day thing that goes on in any other industry, with 30 days of paid leave. You get a lot more leave to cope with things, to be with family, to decompress, to come back to wherever, and then come back. So offshore crew, not all offshore crew will work in my yard. The ones who go only offshore, these are all freelancers. They come for a job, then they take their time off and they go back. Now it depends company to company, and it is really on them to verify how much time off that person has taken, especially if he's a freelancer. Has he taken the mandatory days off, or because he wants to earn more money, he's going from one project to the other, which is dangerous at the end of the day. So the bonus really depends on the company to find out. If you're hiring a freelancer, then has he taken at least, depending on how many days offshore he was, has he taken the mandatory number of days off?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so
That
that's
answers
about
the
the
question. Yeah.
freelancers, right? And those who have been working for a long time? Like there must be permanent staff as well, right? Who
Yes,
go
so
on to
their leaves we manage, because their leaves we know. We know how many days a person has been offshore. We know how many days a person has taken off or not. We do compulsory every time a project finishes or somebody comes back on shore. We do a compulsory. Okay, now you take two of you all go on leave. Two of you all go on leave. You know, we rotate them so that the maintenance work in the yard doesn't stop, but at the same time everybody gets leave to deal with
Okay.
everything.
Okay. There are some first responders training programs also that happen, wherein if there is on duty anyone getting a panic attack or God forbid suicidal ideations or something, then people who are there around them, the colleagues especially, they should be equipped with enough knowledge
They are. So
in
this
regards to how to respond.
safety courses has
Yeah.
a personal
Okay. So that includes.
social course also. Yes, that social course is
Okay.
basically that to
Yeah.
handle these kind of way offshore. So
Mm-hmm.
personal courses
Yeah.
include.
That's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. There is. They are trained for that also. They're trained. The crew itself is trained for that. Of course, there will be a professional doctor available on board, but everybody gets this personal safety courses that they have to go through, which I said are valid, for about 4 years, and then you have to do it again. So that, because it's a refresher course, you have to do it again, because sometimes if you've not faced that kind of situation in 4 years, you may forget what to do. So you have to go through a refresher course again and again.
Yeah, actually, in this regard, like mental health space, it's very debatable, especially when it comes to different workplaces and organizations, depending upon the structure. Because at the end of the day, the empathy of the co-workers matters more in regards to how they are able to handle the situation at that end. So that's why many of the organizations, I recently attended one by Kotak, not recently, like last year. So they were working on mental health capacity building program, wherein
Okay.
an individual's ability to deal with stresses and how they are able to cope up apart from the first responders training. So that's also something we have been actively trying to work on in our projects as well, especially when it comes to from the occupational therapy point of view, because the mental health OT space also works in regards to the you know on-site like into the occupation, how a person is more functional
Correct.
and the productivity increases apart from ergonomics, along with the mental health capacity of an individual. So it was really nice. Thank you so much for
You're most
answering
welcome.
all the questions.
Amazing. Very nice questions and great for the thank you for the update also, Saima. She because Ashwini has been there in this field ever since she was in her 20s. So I think she knows in and out about the technical aspects of it. But yes, there will be a lot of human aspects. And sir,
Definitely. Thank you. It was really nice to listen to everything.
and regarding the question by Dr. Sams also, I think there were a lot of human aspects which were hidden, and that's when we were doing a trial run with Ms. Kalpade just a while ago. I asked her the same questions that our audience will be more interested in what human factors it is involving, because right now she showed just this is the manufacturing unit or this is the these are the machines that we maintain and all, but basically she said that we cannot take pictures of the people working there, so because of safety whatever reasons, what I don't know what reasons they have, but I think they cannot record the people actively at work, but there are certain things that we can actually go and evaluate there. So I think this is a good point of orientation also for her to evaluate that there are other aspects apart from safety. I think in most industries, the safety is taken utmost care of, but ergonomics and mental health, like she mentioned, is hardly taken care of. Meaning, there is not much awareness. It's not that people don't want to do it, but they don't know what to do about it. So there could be certain things that even ergonomists can help you with, occupational therapists can help you with, in terms of various aspects, and that can be identified only when you hire or we have a physical visit to your place. So I hope that we get to see your plans, or what do you call that? The offshore. What do you call that?
Offshore, you will never be able to go offshore.
This
You can come to you're most welcome to come to our yard.
yeah,
Come
yeah,
to the workshop anytime you want. That's not a problem.
yeah.
But going offshore is
difficult.
not possible for everybody
Absolutely.
because the safety course is required
To even go there.
Yes, to even go there.
Yeah.
To even go there.
And
Go there. Your complete physical checkup and your all your safety courses, everything will have to be done. Only then you will be even allowed on a vessel. So yeah, so that is not possible. But yeah, I mean, coming to the factory when the equipment is getting maintained or when you trial run or something is happening, that is definitely possible. That is not an issue at all.
So we will definitely get in touch with you again, because I have a couple of more requests to her. I wish to have one interview with you, because you have been having a roller coaster ride in terms of your personal and professional life, and we would like to discuss that in person as well. So this one was limited to a particular professional discussion, and I really appreciate your time on a Sunday afternoon, where even the people who were keen to attend, they could not get up from their afternoon siestas. But you managed to put things together for us. She has been so busy. Even yesterday at this particular time, she was in meeting, and she was not sure about today's meeting as well, because if there has to be a meeting again, the entire team decides, and that's how. But she managed it somehow, and sneaked some time for us. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much, all the attendees. I think you have been a great inspiration for all of the other professionals, because I think Sunday afternoon, coming in for such a session which was never heard of, I think that itself shows your dedication and interest. So thank you so much, and thanks Richie, and thanks Dr. Nidhi for being the great technical support and great hosts. Thanks again to the speaker a lot. Anybody wants to say something, or we can call it a day?
Thank you, madam, for making us aware of what is going on offshore. At least we got some inputs into it, and a lot more we can help in this matter as we begin to realize what are the problems you all are facing offshore. At the moment, it was just like a general talk. So more specific of how that person is working offshore, and what are the various
That is for
activities. Once we come to know that, then I think we can give in more inputs. Thank you so much.
That's correct. This was more of an introduction to the industry.
Okay.
Something that not
Yes.
everybody is
They
aware
decided
of.
you, which we would
Yes,
never
yes.
have got. Yeah, great. So
Yes.
thank you again, especially Stephen sir. I think you've been a great presence. Thank you, Saima, for your active participation. Dr. Ishwar, Dr. Naina, Dr. Paulomi. I think, these were the prime attendees today, and I really appreciate your presence. Thank you so much, Ashwini, again, and see you soon again.
Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you,
me.
Mona. Thank you, Mona, for doing everything.
Pleasure, sir. Looking forward to seeing you all again.
Okay. Bye-bye. God bless.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.